People ask me this all the time. Did you ever envision this? Did you ever think that it would be this big? And the answer is always yes.
Good uppercut. Oh, he's down. That's it. Mario Yamasaki stops the fight.
We completely believed in this thing when we bought it. The question is the timing right? And the answer to that question is the timing couldn't have been more perfect.
The UFC essentially created the sport of mixed martial arts in the early 90s, but in the early days, it was really like cage fighting.
I had known what the UFC was, like a lot of people back in '93 when it started. I watched the no rules events on pay-per-view, and it was like, wow, this is crazy.
One of the most fascinating things about fighting is when you have somebody that looks like you, talks like you, and comes from where you come from, and they're looked at as the baddest human being on earth, your people surround you and support you.
What's important to remember is that at this point in time in the mid-90s, the UFC had a terrible reputation. Senator John McCain called it human cockfighting, leading a campaign that saw dozens of states and multiple pay-per-view providers to ban it. But there was an undeniable appeal to the fights.
My philosophy has always been, fighting is in our DNA as human beings. No matter what color we are, what country we come from, what language we speak, we like fighting.
Over the last 25 years, Dana White has turned mixed martial arts into a global phenomenon, and in turn made his UFC into a behemoth, generating an estimated $1.3 billion in revenue last year, with staggering Ebitda margins of almost 60%. But that money did not pour in overnight. It started more than 2 decades ago with a bi-coastal college dropout.
I lived in Massachusetts until like 5th grade. Then we moved here to Las Vegas. And then when I was 17, I went back to Boston. So I sort of bounced back and forth between the West Coast and the East Coast, and I got the best of both worlds. Got to meet a lot of different people, and obviously, my roots in boxing started in South Boston, Massachusetts. Yet, there were a lot of opportunities and things that I learned here in Las Vegas that helped me, shape me to what I would end up becoming.
White met Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, who were the billionaire heirs to the Station casino fortune, during their stint at Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas during the late 80s. But it wasn't until a decade later, when they ran into each other at a mutual friend's wedding, that one of the most lucrative friendships in sports combat history would be solidified.
He said he was training boxers. He was kind of in that business, and he was also managing some boxers. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I was just appointed to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, one of the 5 members that regulates the sport of boxing in Nevada. And in kind of a funny way, if it wasn't for Adam Corrigan inviting both of us to his wedding, the UFC may not exist as it does today. And sometimes fate does that.
Me and the Fertitta brothers started doing jiu-jitsu together, and we fell in love with it. We became, obsessed with it, training 3-4 days a week. And then we started to meet some of the UFC fighters. And we were like, wow, these guys are really good guys.
John Lewis was a guy who lived in Las Vegas, and he, at the time, was a UFC fighter. He was on the roster. We started training with John. We did one-on-ones. It was me, Frank, and Dana. And we fell in love with it. I mean, it just completely changed our perspective.
White was managing a few UFC fighters, and while talking to the company, realized it was in trouble. So he convinced the Fertittas to buy the UFC from Bob Meyerowitz before it went bankrupt.
I love risk. I love taking what people would call chances. I like taking opportunities.
In January 2001, the brothers closed a deal to acquire the UFC for $2 million, naming White as the president and giving him a 10% stake.
We felt like what we had here is we had that brand. All of our smart attorneys and consultants told us, what are you guys doing? This is never going to work. How does this make any sense? And what we said is, we're getting 3 letters, the UFC, and that's all that matters. And we'll build the business from there.
You want to talk about people not believing in the UFC? So think about this. When we bought this company for $2 million, we literally bought an old wooden Octagon. We had 3 letters, the UFC, and like 12, 15 contracts, right? The old owner had sold everything, all the ancillary stuff away to Lionsgate, right? So Lionsgate owned everything, the merchandise, the video games, the DVDs. So we flew out to Lionsgate and they sold us the rights back. And I want to say it was like $3 million that was going to be paid over the next several years. So when we left, they were probably cracking up laughing, going, wow, this is going to look great on our books over the next 3 years. Now that those rights are worth, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. So when you talk about not believing, they own the rights to this thing. They never thought this was going to work.
It's pretty incredible that White, who was operating boxing gyms and had never run a big business before, was suddenly trusted to negotiate multi-million-dollar deals.
He really understood who the customer was and what the demographic was and how the product should be presented for it to be successful. He had this incredible drive. Like, he's so competitive, and he would literally run through a wall to make it work. And I think looking back, if me and my brother would have said, we're going to go out, we're going to hire a Harvard MBA, we'd have been toast.
Because of its reputation, nobody would host the UFC events. But the Reborn Company found an early ally in Donald Trump.
He got it, he liked it, he saw it, and he said, come to Taj Mahal, we'll do the events. We did 2 events. He showed up for the first one, stayed till the last.
Trump enjoyed the sport so much that in 2008, he made a failed attempt to launch his own competing MMA venture.
I want to say it was TMZ was interviewing me one time, and they're like, Donald Trump's about to go head to head with you. What do you have to say about that? I said, I'll never say anything bad about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was good to us, but it's a testament to how much he likes fighting and what he saw in the UFC back in those days.
Now people look back and they say, oh, UFC was an overnight success. And no, it wasn't. Like, there were at least 5 years there that were very difficult.
By this time, the Fertittas had sunk more than $30 million into the company with little return.
We got to the point where we were just losing money year after year. Every event we were losing money. And at the same time, fighters wanted to make more money. Managers wanted more money. Everybody wanted.
So one day I was at the office and Lorenzo called me and he's like, I can't keep doing this. Me and my brother can't keep funding this thing. It's getting bad. So I need you to go out and see what you could sell this thing for. I started making phone calls that day, and at the end of the day, I called him back and I said, 7 or 8 million. Could probably get 7 or 8 million for this thing, in my opinion.
So literally went home, woke up the next morning, and just felt like it's not the right thing to do.
I thought it was over, and the next day I'm driving to work, and Lorenzo calls me, and this is literally, quote, what he said: fuck it. Let's keep going.
The way for this business to work was we had to get distribution on television.
But at the time, they wouldn't even allow it on pay-per-view. So think about this. As a grown man, you didn't have the option to buy this thing on pay-per-view. Porn was on pay-per-view, but UFC was not allowed.
We had already gone out and pitched it. Every network in Hollywood, ABC, NBC, CBS, ESPN. I mean, it's a joke, but I did say, like, if the Food Network would put it on, I'd put it on there if we could convince them.
When you're grinding and nobody wants your product and nobody wants to hear about it, you got to sort of go out and then, force them to take it. The guy that ran in-demand pay-per-view, his name was Marshall Zelaznik. He wouldn't even take a meeting with us. So they used to have their big cable TV convention in Century City. And I booked a hotel room there, got up in the morning, went down to where all the conferences were, found out what meeting he was in and waited for him outside the door. And when he came out, I said, Marshall, Dana White from the UFC. You could tell too, when I walked up to him, he was like, how the hell did this guy find me? So I started telling him, we created this reality show. It's designed to sell pay-per-views. It'll be big for both of our businesses. And he hated it, but we ended up working it out. We did a deal with them.
White and the Fertittas teamed up with veteran TV producer Craig Piligian to develop a reality show called The Ultimate Fighter.
Reality television was so big at the time, it was like our Trojan horse to get on TV, with fighting without it actually being fighting. So we were pitching all the networks, nobody liked it. So this new network popped up called Spike TV, and they were labeled the network for men. I mean, if we don't fit there, where do we fit?
They passed. But then we said, hey, why don't we go to them and we will propose that we'll pay for the production. We'll pay for the production and give it to you for free.
The season was going to cost $10 million, but as long as the Fertittas were footing the bill, Spike was happy to take a chance on the show for free.
When you look back on stuff like that, and for other entrepreneurs that are out there, when you have to put up the money, at the time for yourself. It's hard and it seems whatever, but guess what ended up happening? We put up the money, so we owned 100% of everything. We owned everything, which ended up being a much better deal for us in the long run.
Another key decision had to be made, which was who was going to be on TV, who was going to be the host. And it made all the sense in the world for Dana to be that person.
You're over. You either cut the weight in 2 hours per the commission, or you quit now and become eliminated.
He said, I'll do it. And he said, look, this is going to change your life. Like, things are going to change. And he goes, I get it, I understand. But once again, wanting to win and wanting to be successful was the key. It was never about becoming famous. It was about what do we need to do to make the business work. We made the decision that we weren't going to have any announcers and we weren't going to cut the fights. Just whatever happened, happened. And you don't have anybody in your ear telling you what's going on. You're just experiencing this thing. And I really, truly believe, and that was something Dana felt very strong about, that was part of the secret sauce that helped launch the UFC into what it became today.
I've been loyal to the sport of mixed martial arts since I was 19, and I found it, and I was a fan of it. And I said, this is what I want to do. I love this. And then I got a call with 17 days notice to be a replacement on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. I'd never really seen a reality show, so I didn't really know what it was about. Some of the crew said this might never see the light of day. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I knew it was bad.
The show did make it to the air in 2005, and it became an instant ratings hit for Spike,
And it turned White
into a reality TV star.
I was there the moment Dana White found his sea legs. It was the "Do you want to be a fucking fighter" speech.
Do you want to be a fighter? That's the question.
That's why I'm here.
It's not about cutting weight. It's not about living in a house. It's about, do you want to be a fighter? It's not all signing autographs and banging broads when you get out of here. It's not. It's no fun, man. It's a job, just like any other job. So the question is, not did you think you had to make weight? Did you think you had to do this? Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question. And only you know that. Anybody who says they don't, I don't want you here. And I'll throw you the out of this gym so fast your head will spin. It's up to you. I don't care. Cool? I love y'all. That's why you're here. Have a good night, gentlemen.
To me, White has never stopped being that reality TV star. In the years since, he's embraced the attention he gets from saying outrageous things on camera.
Big deal. The guy sleeping next to you stinks. He's drunk all night, making noise, and you can't sleep. You got roommates.
But with his aggressive promotion, the UFC took off. And because it retained 100% ownership rights of its media, when Spike renewed the show for additional seasons and eventually broadcasted UFC live events, its revenues skyrocketed.
It was because of Dana that we had this incredible talent, incredible visionary as far as understanding and helping to create the product and having the street smarts and the toughness to be able to deal with the fighters and the managers.
Realistically, Dana is the best thing that ever happened to the sport of mixed martial arts, so it's kind of easy to be loyal to him.
The UFC developed into something like a cult
under White,
and its fans developed a cult-like passion for it.
Dana was put on this earth to do what he does, literally to be the face of the UFC. I think the fact that he became such a big part of the brand actually helped the brand and helped elevate the brand of the UFC, and that association between the two worked. His persona, the way he interacts, and he's taken to it just perfectly in the way that he runs the press conferences to doing press.
Listen, Islam knows I love him, man, but you know how I feel about that. John Jones is undefeated for however many years, and boo all you want. And fuck you for asking that question. Go ahead.
By 2010, the company was valued at $2 billion when it sold a 10% stake to the son of one of the richest men in Abu Dhabi. The following year, the UFC landed a lucrative new broadcast deal with Fox, and the Fertitta soon began receiving offers from potential buyers.
The numbers just got so big that we're like, maybe it does make sense to exit the business and see kind of where this thing can go from there.
In 2016, the brothers sold the UFC to WME IMG, now known as Endeavor, for more than $4 billion.
White's take?
$360 million before taxes.
Even though we love the business and we're passionate about it, you know, at the time, the largest deal ever in the history of sports felt pretty good.
It was a weird time for me. I didn't want to sell. Lorenzo did. And it was at the point where, you know, Lorenzo finally had to sit me down and said, "You're my best friend. I'm done. I want to move on. Be happy for me, okay?" And, you know, once he put it to me that way, I understood it better, I guess I would say.
Well, I think it's important for Dana, even when we exited, to stay on with the UFC because he was such an integral part of the brand. He was the face of the business. And in a lot of ways, he's just irreplaceable. You can't replace him. It is what it is. I mean, Dana is the UFC.
Luckily, Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel
Had been White's agent for years.
and told him he could continue running the business how he wanted. That choice turned out to be a profitable one a few years later when the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the sports world.
All of a sudden, we roll into the scariest time in my lifetime. I'm 55, scariest time in my lifetime. And I'm going to tell all these people that have helped me build this business, I know this is horrible and I don't know what the future holds, but I got to lay, 37% of you off. Good luck, everybody. I hope you make it. I hope you all make it through. That's never going to happen here, ever, under any circumstances. When the COVID thing happened, we had the vaccine, right? If you wanted it, you could take it. If you didn't have to take it. It was not mandatory here at the UFC for employees or fighters to be vaccinated. But if you wanted it, we'd help you get it. Whichever one you wanted to take, we'd help you get it. We don't tell grown men and women what to do. This is a free country, and you can do whatever you want to do.
White's ideology didn't mix well with the government mandates at the time.
I own an arena right next door here, right? So in my hometown, I don't need to pack the arena or do any of that. I need a couple fighters, I need some commission guys, I need some production people. And we can beam this thing out all over the world. We had social distancing and masks and all the stuff that was going on during that time, and we would have abided by whatever the standards and rules were. And the governor here still wouldn't let me do it.
Nevada's Democratic governor, Steve Sisolak, squashed the plan.
And White
Never forgot.
He can hold a grudge. If you cross him, scorched earth, like he's just going to burn you out.
During the next election cycle, he endorsed and gave money to Sisolak's opponent, Republican Joe Lombardo, who won a narrow victory.
I can set up on an island. If there's some infrastructure there where I can actually do production, I just need an island or somewhere where I can put on fights. Ended up working out a deal in Florida and ended up working out a deal in Abu Dhabi. We ran our business through COVID. Everybody got paid. We honored every contract. And our business grew something crazy like 77% through COVID.
By 2023, the UFC was valued at $12.1 billion.
When you lead your family, your business, whatever it may be, you figure out solutions to problems and you take care of everybody, not just yourself.
I think why people are so attracted to Dana, whether just from a friendship standpoint or people want to follow him, that's why he's such a great leader. He's just got this halo about him or something about him that he's so likable. He can literally hold court and entertain like nothing you've ever seen.
In December of 2024,
I joined White in Las Vegas.
for the days leading up to UFC 310, and I saw firsthand the swagger Lorenzo referred to
When White was holding
court at a baccarat table in the high roller room of the Fontainebleau Casino.
Welcome to the after party.
People are relentless in his presence, going as far as to pitch him their products in between bets. And these are not small bets. He's betting $300,000 a hand and winning. After a few hands, he casually calls it a night.
That's 1.1 million for me, man. I'm fucking out.
Honestly, I was in shock, especially with how nonchalant his reaction was. I mean, he told me he basically does this every night, even when he's not surrounded by the cameras and the internet creators he's trying to impress on the night before UFC 310.
So what are you watching for when you watch these fights?
So one of the big things when people watch me watching the fights, they're like, this guy's got the best seat in the house, and all he's looking at is the screen.
Okay.
Because whatever's going on inside the octagon, I can't control. That's up to the fighters and whatever. I'm looking at the broadcast and things that I like and don't like. My team's so freaking good. There's a red phone. Very rarely do I have to pick up that red phone and do anything. But yeah, that's when I'm there. I'm there watching the production. That's good to see you, buddy. Hi, buddy. Hi.
And what about the crowd reaction? I guess are you judging the pop that people get, when they're?
Nah, we don't really do that. I mean, that is determined by where you are and how big the fight is and what the fight means that night. It's always good. It's always good when you get the what's up, Doc? It's always good when you get the pop, but it's not everything in the moment at that time of night. But we do look at stuff like that. Like if a guy, low down on the prelims gets noticed and is what's up, brother? Gets a pop that you don't expect, then then that means something to us. You know what I mean?
Okay. What about this first fight?
What do you mean?
This first that we're watching. What are we looking for?
Yeah. So normally this spot in the prelims, the spot in the prelims, the opening spot is what we think is going to be the most exciting fight. So you want to open the show with a bang.
It's hard to imagine any other CEO or sports league commissioner getting that kind of reaction from a crowd. There's no doubt that he's the UFC's biggest star, but that doesn't stop him from interacting with his fans.
Yes, sir. You're the greatest fan in the world, so thank you, brother. I love everything you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
White knows his audience, and he knows how to reach them. He's curated a manaverse of bro-heavy creators and podcasters like Theo Vaughn, who line the front row of every UFC fight.
Yeah, way to get you fucking troublemakers out of the, yeah.
White's ringside throne is like a little command center.
So this is the backbone?
This phone right here, I pick it up and it rings directly to the truck, to the guy who's producing the show. If there's something that I don't like or have to talk to him or whatever.
Shay said that in a pay-per-view, you want the first fight to be the exciting one. You're saying that so that people that pay for it are like, fuck the person wants to have to.
There's a pacing, If you look at this is what you. So we start out on the prelims, right? And these are people that are making their way up. This is on ESPN2. So you want to open ESPN2 with a great fight, and you want the main event, which would be the main event, to be good. Now you're coming into the pay-per-view. You want the pay-per-view to open with a bang, and then the main event hopefully to deliver too. You want everything to deliver, but you want to set yourself up for success. This fight should be crazy. There are no guarantees in life, but if I had to bet, I would bet anything that fight's going to be absolutely crazy.
This is going to ruin it for me. My first UFC is going to be here, But
it's your first one?
In person. Yeah, I've watched it. For it to be sitting right here for the first one is just...
Here we go.
Yeah.
At one point, White just started reading a text that he got to me, and I was at first like, what is he doing? But he seemed very, very excited to read it.
There are many bigger problems in the world right now that need to be fixed. I'll catch the next fight. Tell Joe Rogan I said hi. Donald J. Trump.
There you go.
It was pretty surreal to realize that the future president was so interested in a UFC fight, and it made me think about how this little orbit around White now includes people like the president, several billionaires, and even the most popular podcaster on the planet, Joe Rogan.
Joe's podcast was always big, but then I think everything that's happened over the last 5 or 6 years and the way certain people have dealt with it has led us to where we are today. You know what I mean?
I mean, the thing that I'm like trying to wrap my head around is like your guys' little like slew and how that is now, you guys are like in the center of the culture almost, it's the center of politics and all these, your fingers are in all these different places, but you guys are doing a lot of the same things you once does. You and Lorenzo, Joe Rogan, I mean, all these guys are kind of like have just moved into the center of everything that's going on.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It wasn't by design. It all just sort of happened, and I think that all of us, what we all have in common, we've all stayed, like I was telling you earlier, it's about, everything in life right now is about authenticity. Who's authentic, who's real, who's whatever. We've always stayed true to who we are and what we believe, and no matter what type of pressure was out there, we never folded to any of that. We just stayed to our core beliefs and values and who we are, not only as people, but as a business and as a sport and as, you know, a podcaster and Lorenzo as a business owner.
It also seems like there's an element of like loyalty and sticking together, and everyone like, I support you, you support me.
A lot of that. Yeah. I mean, we are all viciously loyal to each other.
Right. And it's at a symbiotic sort of relationship, you know, as you, one side's resident, one side help the other one.
If you don't have loyalty, what do you have? Right?
Yeah.
What do you have if you don't have loyalty?
White actually told me at one point that his personal politics were right in the middle and even leaning left, which seems crazy because when you hear him talk, you can't help but notice a lot of MAGA language.
You know, I don't want to be overly political about it, but when this whole woke movement started, and they started going after people. I mean, they went after Joe Rogan too. I was like, you're gonna happen. Yeah. You know? And then you start talking about sponsors and all that other kind of stuff. And my thing has always been, listen, we love sponsors, we love having sponsors, but I'm at a point in my life and my career where I want to be aligned with my sponsors. And I found out through COVID who I was aligned with and who I wasn't. There were people coming out of COVID that couldn't pay me enough to get back in business with them. They didn't have enough money to pay me to do one more day of business with them. I wouldn't do it. You know? Yeah. Life is too short to deal with that bullshit.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas for UFC 310.
Wow. What's up, buddy? What's up, man?
Oh my God, did you hear that thud?
At this point, White has near total control over every aspect of the UFC and its fighters.
When you are a fighter and you're on the posters, there's some equity there. Like, they need you. You know, that's a good thing, right? And you have to trust that the UFC wants what's best for you, wants what's best for your brand, and that, you know, your goals align.
Not all former UFC fighters feel that way. There's a pair of antitrust class action lawsuits against the UFC for suppressing fighter pay. The first case got settled in October for $375 million, but remember, this is a company that made $1.3 billion in revenue last year. In the meantime, White launched a new venture in late 2022 with the Fertittas and with Craig Pelagian, hoping to use the same blueprint they did with the UFC for Power Slap, a league in which contestants take turns open hand slapping each other into oblivion.
We have this partnership, and it's only been a couple of years, and the thing is just exploding in popularity. It's very similar to what we experience in the UFC, where once you get the momentum going, we know we have a fan base, we have a global fan base, and we're just going to start expanding this around the globe. And we really think it is the next big thing in sports.
It grew much quicker than UFC did. I mean, we have more sponsors now for Power Slap than we had 10 years into the UFC.
Power Slap already has 35 sponsors and a media rights deal with conservative-leaning live streaming platform Rumble. White says the league receives $2.5 million per event in site fees and earned $4.5 million from a branded mobile game. Forbes estimates the company had $50 million in revenue in 2024, just its second year of existence.
If you built this incredible business, then you had the chance to go back and do it all again, and it's almost identically the same. It's what I'm getting right now with Power Slap, so it's been really fun for me.
Videos of the brutal knockouts have drawn millions of views on social media and plenty of critics. The Brain Injury Association of America wrote an open letter to Nevada's athletic commission, calling the nation's sport, quote, nothing short of watching traumatic brain injury happen to its participants in real time.
People are laughing at us. People are saying this isn't a real sport. People are saying nobody's ever going to put this on TV. Nobody will ever sponsor you. But I think that's when Dana's at his best. It's when people question and people say, you can't do this. That's when he's at his best. And he's going to build SLAP into something that rivals the size of the UFC.
When everybody's saying how horrible it is and this and that and everything else, you know you got something good. You know you got it.
In the 2000s, he used reality TV to launch the UFC. Now, he's finding his core demographic online, building relationships with influential internet creators. He gambles with them, he gives them front row seats to fights, he offers free reign to mingle and create whatever content they want. And they do it for free. PowerSlap spends less than $25,000 per event in marketing.
You told me that you feel like you're ahead of everyone else, or no one else is catching up to kind of mobilizing internet creators for your businesses.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that other people aren't doing it. They're just not doing it at the level that we are. Listen, I see a day not too long from here when the whole media section is gone. You know, there is no media section. We bring media in and we could host them up in the suites or whatever, but it's going to be all about the influencers.
And I guess, like, what material impact do you feel like that's had on either of your businesses? But it seems like PowerSlap especially, that's kind of like a core tenet of the strategy, you know?
100%. Yeah, I mean, when you're building something from scratch, if you look at how long, I told you this a couple times, or a couple days ago, when you look at the building a brand new business like this, and what it took 10 years to do in the UFC, we've done in less than 2 years with PowerSlap. But the world is different than it was in 2001. The internet, social media, you know, these influencers, the list goes on and on.
And in order to connect with them, because I feel like movie studios, everyone wants, like, oh, let's get the influencers, let's get the young people, but to connect with them requires like a level of like being one of them, speaking their language, hanging out with them. It seems like that's something that you've done well.
Well, it's a level of authenticity is what it is. So as I started to do this and we started connecting and doing things with different businesses associated either with the UFC or PowerSlap, they're like, well, they're going to have to do this many posts and they have, no, you don't tell them what to do. You bring them in and you let them do what they do. They're really creative and they know how to create the right content. I'm 55 years old. I'm going to tell a bunch of, 20-year-old kids how to, no, they know what they're doing. That's why they're as big as they are. You don't tell them what to do. You don't put any restraints on them or a list of demands. You just bring them in and let them be authentic.
The other kind of element of that is I've been able to witness a little bit of like the whirlwind or hurricane that surrounds you. We saw that last night, I guess, in the gaming room as well. But when these creators come up to you, you make sure to like, make them feel really welcome, like, oh man, thank you for coming, all that sort of thing. I guess.
Well, I mean it. I mean, when you think about these kids come in and, they spend their own money, they create this content. We have a very mutual beneficial relationship. I bring them in and it takes them to a whole nother level. They come in and do what they do and make us younger and create incredible content around our businesses.
During the last election cycle, White really turned that same marketing engine toward Donald Trump. He set Trump up on podcasts with creators like Theo Vaughn, the Nelk Boys, Barstool Sports, and eventually Joe Rogan, which turned out a demographic famously resistant to voter turnout efforts.
The world is an ugly place, and there's conflicts going on all around the world all the time. We don't tell grown men and women what to do, what to say, what to believe in. Never once through my whole Trump thing have I ever told any of my employees, not only do I tell my employees who to vote for, we don't even go, hey guys, it's November, get out there and vote. You're all grown men and women. If you want to go vote, go vote. If you don't want to vote, don't vote.
Obviously, Trump's ability to dominate news cycles and get his message out there led to his election, but White has proven that the same pugnaciousness and tribalism can be an ascendant business model. And he's taken it mainstream. The UFC is now bigger in America than golf or hockey in cultural resonance, and soon in television money.
People laughed at us in the UFC, said this will never be bigger than boxing. This will never work. This will never be on TV. All of this will never happen. Sponsors will never sponsor you. Now look at it today.
We believe that this would work all over the world, and it has. And we are the biggest pay-per-view provider in the world. we're in over 1 billion homes worldwide on some form of television. But when you look at what the ceiling for this business is, there's 8 billion people in the world. So I believe that if I put the right fight on in the right place with the right guys, you could get 8 billion people to watch a fight, I believe.
Doubt Dana White at your own risk. I mean, this is a guy who was teaching boxing classes and now sits a row behind former presidents at the inauguration and is on the Meta board of directors. It's hard to imagine what the UFC will look like one day when he finally steps away.
The UFC is a sport and a franchise and a business that will go on long after I'm gone. It'll just be different, you know. The way that this company was built and how it's run right now are by my philosophies of what I think about fighting, what I think about matchmaking, and many other things. And then there will be somebody else here who will have other philosophies and ideas, and it will just be different. But the UFC will go on forever.